stop to groom itself.
Oh my god, he was going into them nuts. Oh my god! Yo! Bro, he really stroking it though. Oh my god. Bro, we don't need to see you do that. Pick up them nuts and go! It's Zoom, and this is 1,000 ants versus a centipede. And I don't know why I clicked on this, but we gotta figure out what's going on, man. Let's go.
This is 1,000 ants in captivity, and in this clip, I'm holding a venomous Mediterranean centipede.
Hey, that's another pain point for me, bro. I don't like things with a lot of legs. You feel me? If they got too many legs, see, this is a double whammy because it got a whole lot of legs. And it's slimy. I don't like that.
So the question is,
and it is making a little sound.
Centipede survive against an army of 1,000 ants, or would the ants slowly bring it?
Oh my god! I just got a bad PTSD memory. When I was a little kid in one of my old house, I saw a centipede walking on the floor. I ran for my life. I promise. I was like, "What is?" Hey, I'm like 6 years old. I'm like, "What is that?" Hey, I thought it was a demon. Oh my, I was like, what is that?
Down with nothing but numbers. Well, in this video, I'm gonna test that alongside tons of different scenarios to see just how capable ants really are.
Wow.
The problem is, the 1,000 Camponotus ants we have don't really like to be filmed under bright light. So we're just gonna have to order a different species of ants. And while this is not going to be cheap, but because I saved on delivery, it actually took a full week for the ants to arrive to my doorstep. And guys, I think the ants are inside of this box. Let's see. Oh yeah, look at that.
Wait, how do they like stay alive? don't they suffocate?
That's a lot of ants. And if you look close, these are harvester ants, which amazingly are equipped with one of the most painful ant stings in North America and humongous mandibles, meaning the ants will have a big chance of fighting off potential predators. But will that be enough to beat the centipede? Well, we're just gonna have to find out. Now, before we can do anything with the 1,000...
First off, I know... Okay, either you got a mic from God himself, or you edited in them centipede sounds, them little slimy crawling sounds, because I don't want to hear that. You feel me? I don't want to hear them little slimy sounds.
Ants we just bought, the ants are going to need a nest, since there's a bunch of things planned for them, going from easy to medium to extremely hard. So let's go ahead and start building the ant nest. And for that, let's just use an aquarium I have laying around and that we're going to slightly modify. And by modify, I mean drill a hole in the aquarium. Oh yeah, look at that, it turned out perfect.
Okay.
And we're going to use the hole we just drilled to connect a tube to the nest that later on will be used to let the ants leave the nest for all of the different tasks we have.
And you know what's crazy? I would have had a contamination. My house would have been filled with ants because I would have opened up the jar and just poured them hoes in there. Hey, you're not supposed to do that, huh? You gotta do something like this, ain't you?
But with the aquarium ready, let's quickly add the sand and press it in so that the ants can freely build up the nest. So now it's finally time to release the 1,000 harvester ants into the aquarium. And although everything seemed normal at the moment, we were oblivious to the fact that we completely forgot to prep the walls of the nest. And within moments, we had a disastrous amount of...
See, this one, hey bro, look, you're supposed to be the professional. This is something I would do. This is a mistake I would make. Ain't you the professional?
Ants escaping, so we had to fix this very carefully and very fast, since having a bunch of very venomous ants roaming the room was a terrible thing. So all we could do is paint the wall with baby powder and pray.
Man, ain't gonna lie, hey, I would have moved out. I would have really sold that whole house. You feel me? And I would have lied and said, there are no ants in here. I would have lied to them folks. I'm not gonna lie. You feel me?
None of the ants escaped too far, and luckily for us, the crisis was successfully averted, and none of the ants escaped. So next up, all we had to do is wait for the ants to start building their nest, which they began to do immediately. So now that we have the ants actually digging up the nest, we're gonna have to give them some water so that they don't dehydrate. Because for the next couple of days, all the ants will be doing is hard labor, since if you look close enough, the ants move tiny bits of the sand one piece at a time, a process that is definitely tiring and time-consuming. But ants are fascinating creatures. Within just a day or two, they had completely transformed the aquarium into an intricate network of tunnels, complete with massive underground chambers, all by working together as a perfectly coordinated team. And they moved so much sand that they ended up burying the water tube we had given them. But that means the ants are finally ready for their first challenge, taking on the Venus flytrap, an apex predator of the plant world. It may look harmless at first glance, but it has a evolved into one of nature's most efficient killers. Hidden inside are tiny trigger hairs. And
I'm not gonna lie, I used to want one of these as a kid. Like I was gonna feed it. I was gonna feed it stuff too, but I don't think it. I think I got scammed. I don't think it worked or something.
Anything touches them, the trap rapidly closes and starts digesting the insect, eventually leaving behind nothing but an empty shell to be carried away by the wind. So why on earth are we putting the ants through this? Well, the goal is simple: train them to recognize and avoid danger. Since fighting the centipede, well, that's not gonna be easy, and they're gonna need all the training they can get. So we began by placing some seeds into several of the Venus flytraps, since in nature seeds are the main source of food for harvester ants, and their mission is going to be carefully retrieving the seed and carrying it safely back to the nest. So can they do this? Well, let's find out. Here you can see the very first explorer.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie, if I was one of them ants, I would see the seed, right? And I was like, okay, but it's a seed on one of them little traps, okay? And I would have got like one, not my friend, but I would have got like one of them other ants. I said, hey man, the queen gonna be real happy if you go get that seed off that plant. You feel me? Queen gonna be real happy, bro. Go get that seed. Hey, I would have made sure it was the coast was clear before I went up on there. You feel me?
And setting off to investigate the brand new world we had just built for the colony. And within moments, he had already wandered over to the Venus flytraps to check them out. But somehow he completely avoided the dangerous plant and just kept exploring like nothing was there.
Yeah, that's me. Hey, that's literally me. You feel me? That ant is, hey, what's that ant name? That's me, bro. That is literally my ant.
More and more ants were starting to reach the challenge through the entrance. And just like that, we had our first two explorers, Beep and Bob, start the challenge.
Okay, so I must be Bob.
Beep noticed a seed inside the flytrap, but he had no idea he was already making a fatal mistake. Unfortunately for Beep, he'll become nutrients for the plant, while the rest of the colony hopefully learns from his mistake.
I told you what I said I was Bob, huh? What'd I tell you? I told you I was Bob. You would not have caught me up in them plant unless I was gonna get some.
Shortly after that, we had another ant interested in the Venus flytrap. But the thing is, this flytrap was empty. And what the ant was actually interested in is the nectar that the Venus flytrap produces to attract insects. However, it seems the ants are learning a thing or two and he left the trap safely. Something I hoped would happen with the rest of the ants. And as time was flowing, the ants were starting to get comfortable around the Venus flytraps, which only meant it was a matter of time before these ants succeed. But then we spotted one of the bravest ants yet, casually walking all over the flytraps. Either he was fearless or he had absolutely no idea how dangerous the plant actually was. And finally, the moment we've all been waiting for, the ant was actually trying to pick up the seed. Okay, maybe.
First off, I'm not gonna lie, you really set him up for failure. Hey, that seed looked like it was glued onto that plant, bro.
We had made this challenge a little too difficult. Every time an ant tried to grab the seed, it would brush against the trigger hairs, causing the trap to snap shut and turn the unfortunate ant into nutrients. And trust me, we were ready to give up and move on to the next challenge. But something about this flytrap was different. Sure enough, only a few moments after setting up the camera, another ant climbed inside to inspect the seed. Somehow, despite walking all over the trap, it managed to avoid triggering it. And after struggling to get a good—
Wow, that John got ED. He couldn't get up. It couldn't get hard. Give that thing some Viagra, bro.
Rip, the ant finally picked up the seed and walked right out of the flytrap without a single scratch. It immediately raced through the tube all the way back to the nest, completing the very first challenge for the entire colony and earned—
Imagine this though, you risk your entire life to get a penny. That's essentially what we just saw. One little seed? Bro. It's like, imagine you tell your friends, like, okay, you go back to your wife or whatever, or your husband, whatever you got, you know what I'm saying? You go back to them, right? You go, you went to the hood. I'm talking about the most dangerous area in the world. And you found a penny on the floor and brought that bitch back and said, look what I got. That's what this reminds me of, man.
Everyone a well-deserved reward, which means we can now move on to the next challenge, the tightrope of Zeus. Yep, that's right, the second challenge is this thing. The ants will have to walk across this extremely narrow tightrope over a lake of acidic water. Yeah, no, I'm kidding. That would probably be illegal. It's just normal water. However, if the ants do manage to fall, they will end up swimming in this lake, which could result in them drowning. But ants are known to be good swimmers that can even build floating rafts just to survive a flood. So this challenge was going to be very interesting. And well, to complete it, all the ants have to do is just walk over the thread like it's just another Monday, grab a seed of their choice.
Oh, wait, what if they grab the seed, but that bitch fall into the ocean? Oh my god, we gotta see what's gonna happen.
Ants' nest. So can they complete this challenge? Well, let's find out. But before we get to that, if you're watching this video in the first couple of months of its release, you still have a chance to subscribe before we hit 1 million subscribers. You see, ever since we were kids, my cousin and I have always...
Hey, shout out to them. But you know we can skip that ad though, you feel me?
To our second challenge, we already had our first ant roaming around the starting point, and its very first objective was simple: find the thread, which I'm assuming shouldn't take that long since there's nothing else on the platform. But nonetheless, ants were starting to enter the second training camp, and I was interested to see if the ants can actually walk on the thread. But that's still something we're gonna have to discover, because for some reason the ants were just completely ignoring the thread. Not only that, but one of them actually managed to fall into the water in the first couple of minutes of this challenge. And what's interesting is that the ant isn't actually drowning. If you look close enough, you can actually see that the ant is trying to swim. But considering these are my pets, I decided to help out the ant by pulling it out of the water. And then my cousin was trying to show the ant where to go, but the ant had different plans and it just jumped.
I thought that's cheating though. You can't intervene. This is a nature test. We can't be intervening, bro.
Back into the water. But not to worry, Baloney was the chosen one. He immediately figured out where to go, and just like that, the chosen one failed. Honestly, we had no idea why the ants were struggling that much to find the thread, until we stumbled across something very interesting. As it turns out, ants don't actually have perfect vision. In fact, they see the world very blurry, relying mostly on movement and changes in light to navigate. So with that in mind, we helped the colony learn exactly where the thread was. And just like that, the ant understood where to go. Slowly but surely, it was making progress, carefully walking all over the water lake. And honestly, this was amazing to watch in real life. I mean, to see the ant finally reach the other side was great. So now
look at all them seeds over there. Buddy finna come home with a bag. Oh my god. This like going into the hood and find a this ain't even like this like going into the suburbs, but you black and it's like racist cops around. Like, and you go and get a bag. Oh my god.
The part was officially over, and next up came the real challenge. The ant had to grab a seed and take it back home, which on paper sounds easy, but who knows what's going on inside of that tiny brain. However, the longer we watched, the more it seemed like the ant was carefully picking the perfect seed. So we waited, just carefully watching, and yeah, it left.
He said, I don't even want that shit. Hey, bro.
But moments later, the ant was back, and this time it was most definitely choosing the right seed. But before taking it back to the colony, it stopped to groom itself, and it might even seem like a strange time to do this.
Oh my god, he was going into them nuts. Oh my god!
But remember when I mentioned that ants don't have perfect vision? Well, that's because their antennae are their most important tool, and they use them for almost everything they do. So keeping them clean is essential, which meant this ant was doing
bro, he really stroking it though. Oh my god. Bro, we don't need to see you do that. Pick up them nuts and go.
Everything exactly right. However, it decided to leave without grabbing anything, but instead it was soaking the thread with a chemical trail. And not only that, but it was also sharing the information it gathered.
Why is he so big compared to the other one? Pause. Why is he huge though? Look!
With the rest. So at that point, I was certain that soon enough we'll see one of the ants complete this challenge. And the more ants climbed onto the platform, the more we had to keep a close eye on them so that we wouldn't miss the big moment. And then it finally happened. One of the ants picked up a piece of food and began carrying it back home. And although it got a bit lost in the way, it still managed to find the right path back to the thread. And since this was a special little ant, we named him Michael. And Michael's task was not easy. It seemed like he was struggling to keep his balance because the piece of food he was carrying wasn't tiny.
Hey, that boy put that hole in reverse. Oh my, did y'all see how he said, you feel me?
Getting so close to the finish line, Michael still had to fight his way through, forcing every bit of strength he had to keep moving forward. Nonetheless, he pulled through and completed the challenge like an absolute champion, earning the colony some extra food, but also bringing the ants one step closer to being ready for the final boss, Centipede. However, before they can face their final opponent, there was one more challenge left, and that of course is 1,000 mealworms. Yep, we definitely counted them.
my god!
And this time there's gonna be a time limit and a special arena for the ants to fight in. I'll explain.
Wait, they finna fight? They finna get to fighting? Oh, nah, this about to be crazy, bro. This is gonna be like UFC. Oh my god, this is gonna be tough.
And a bit more while we drop all 1,000 mealworms into this enclosure. And what we wanted to see is if the ants can actually hunt down their own prey. Since up until this point, we've been training the ants to do everything else except hunting. So for this challenge, we're giving the ants 1 hour to defeat as many mealworms as they can. And let me tell you something, the ants weren't messing around. Immediately, they started attacking anything that was moving. And although the sheer number of mealworms would probably scare anyone, the ants didn't run. In fact, the ones trying to escape were the mealworms, and they were doing so while being bitten and stung by the ants. And slowly, the giant pile of worms started to spread out, making it even easier for the ants to surround them. But even the mealworms that were still packed together didn't stand much of a chance. The ants were literally just walking all over.
Bro, them mealworms literally are pussy, bro. They're not doing nothing. They're just sitting there and taking it. They're not biting back. They not fighting back. If I was one of them, I would have whipped my tail up and whipped over them ants. You feel me? They're not doing none of that. This is sad, bro. This is sad to watch.
Them like this was not even a threat. And after just a few minutes of watching, I finally noticed the first mealworm that had actually been injured. You can see some of the white fluid leaking from its body. This is actually hemolymph, which is basically the insect equivalent of blood. So every ant attacking a mealworm would eventually penetrate the skin and injure it. But I noticed something else. Even the worms that were in the middle of transforming into pupae weren't being ignored. And one of the ants was repeatedly stinging it, trying to immobilize it. But
bro, that man was twerking on him. What did we just watch?
for some weird reason, the venom was not working on the mealworm. Not only that, some even managed to escape the danger and were just wandering around the arena. Psych! The ants were not about to let anyone escape, and that's where things got even more interesting. The ants started trying to pick up the mealworms and maybe carry them back to the nest, which honestly I found very hard to believe that this was even possible. I mean, a full mealworm is so much bigger than a single ant, so I think a single ant would really struggle to move a mealworm on its own. But little did I know, ants are capable of carrying objects many times heavier than their own bodies, so maybe, just maybe, this could be possible, especially since there were other ants coming in to help, giving them an even better chance of success. But the mealworm wasn't about to give up. It kept struggling and wiggling around, because for it, this wasn't just a challenge, it was a matter of survival. And if it kept fighting hard enough, maybe the ants would just give up. However, for this mealworm, this wasn't the case. The ant had a mission, bring back the feast to the nest. And no matter how slippery the tube was, the ant wasn't giving up. It kept slipping and falling and getting back on track to feed the colony. And no matter how hard it tried, it fell again and again and again. But then something changed in the way it was gripping the mealworm. And this was the first time the ants were so close to completing the mission. With only 17 minutes left on the clock, the ants started working as a team. And at this point, I was very interested to see what would happen with the mealworm that is still alive, by the way, in the middle of the nest full of ants. And as expected, they gave it no chance. But the mealworm fought with every last ounce of strength it had until eventually...
Wait, so hold on. You mean to tell me them ants went to the mealworm hood and just started... Bro, oh my God. That is sad. I thought this was in the ants hood. No, they went to the mealworm hood and started... Wow, they spun the block on the mealworms.
Eventually, it disappeared into the darkness of the sand. But the ants still had 15 minutes left on the clock, and they were not slowing down. They continued bringing mealworm after mealworm after mealworm, working as a team, giving us the ultimate answer that they were ready for the centipede. And as the timer struck 0, the ants pulled the last mealworm. So their training was now complete. They had learned to recognize danger, they had proven their agility, and they had shown us just how well they could work together as a colony. So without wasting any more time, they were looking for the boss Centipede. And we decided to give them yet another arena specifically for this fight. And as you can see, the ants are already familiar with the terrain. And there's a bunch of them just roaming around waiting for food. But they still have the freedom to leave the arena at any given moment. So if the ants will fight the Centipede, that is by choice. And that is because this fight will be very, very hard.
But forget all of that. Look at the Centipede, guys. Yeah. That is actually scary. I shouldn't be holding this.
And the reason it's scary is because the Centipede is venomous, meaning it's designed to cause intense pain. And we're going to be releasing it into 1,000 ants to see how exactly they will deal with such a dangerous arthropod. And there you go. The fight begins.
Oh my god! Bro, that thing is fast. Nah, bro, you couldn't pay me to get near that.
Right now with the Centipede running all over the place like a crazy maniac. But we were training the ants exactly for this moment. And although it looks like the Centipede is just trying to run away, if you look close enough, the ants are already swarming it. And the Centipede is starting to slow down. However, that doesn't mean it will not fight back, because at the moment it's just searching for a way to avoid fighting. Whereas the ants are already trying to deal damage. And by the looks of it, they're kind of succeeding. And we can see that there's a bunch of ants attacking it at the same time. There's at least 30 right now climbing on it, biting it, and stinging it. So if the Centipede doesn't...
At a certain point, when are you gonna stop running? You can't go nowhere. Fight! Like, what is happening? Come on, man. You gotta do something, bro.
Change its strategy, it's going to lose. And when I actually started to feel bad for it, it struck back. And yeah, what you're seeing over there is venom being injected into the ant, which means it's definitely going to die. And up until this moment, we really wanted the ants to succeed. But the longer we observed the Centipede, the more we understood the mistake we made. The Centipede was killing off our pet ants one by one.
Oh my god, he just bit his head off.
How many ants were swarming it, it felt like they didn't do any damage. Whereas every time the Centipede struck, we would lose an ant. So we decided enough was enough and pulled the Centipede out of the arena. But unfortunately, a few of the ants were holding onto it. So at that point, all we could do is watch the Centipede annihilate the ants. And honestly, it didn't even take that long before it finished off the final ant. So in the end, the Centipede was so much stronger, meaning the ants weren't ready. So next time, we'll train them even better.
I don't think them ants can kill that Centipede, bro. I'm gonna be real. Hey, but that video, man. Like the video, subscribe to that to join the Zoom army. Love y'all, man. Zoom out.